core of our being, we find stillness. A stillness that is beyond words, beyond comprehension. Beyond even the notion of stillness. It knows no time, no boundaries to its infinite space. No stress, no resistance, no rush. Nothing but this infinite moment. We cannot find this kind of stillness through busyness. We have active minds, active bodies, busy lives. And we can often mistake stillness for a moment of rest. And yet in the moment of rest, we still may not find stillness. This stillness is akin to a day without any breeze at all. So still, it strikes you at the center of your being. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Nothing else but this. This stillness is called emptiness in Buddhism. This infinite space. This sense of no doing, no one here to do. And yet there is this spontaneous unfolding, ever changing, ever flowing. Arising from this stillness. Some call it awareness. In Sanskrit, Ananda, bliss. Bliss may be misleading in the sense that we come to think of it as a state, something we feel or experience. Rather than the essence of what we are. Bliss as a state, like any other state, can be attained and lost. And the stillness remains, unchanging, amidst the ever-changing. The eye of the storm. We could call it grace. The unnamed mystery. Suchness. Or perhaps we could call it peace. Peace is not the same as quiet. Peace means the end of suffering. We are not at war with what is. We are not at war within ourselves. The mind can swing from tree to tree like a monkey. Grasping at thoughts, ideas, memories, wishes. it likes entertainment. Whatever is the most interesting or exciting snippet, it swings to next. The mind doesn't need to stop to know peace. Peace is allowing everything to be as it is. Not to bicker with it, not to resist it or try and change it. To simply notice. When the mind is swinging, grasping, whether it is busy or quiet makes no difference. The stillness remains as the space in which all the thoughts arise and subside. It was there before the first thought, and will be there long after the last. Every emotion arises within stillness. When we move from this heart of stillness, we are at peace with everything, with ourselves, with others, with our mind, our emotions, our story, our judgments, and life. Trying to locate this heart of hearts, the center of our being. The origin of stillness. The essence of peace. Is like trying to find a pocket of space within space. There is nothing separate from the one. There is nothing that is not stillness. It's like trying to see space. It is all around us and within us, and within everything we can perceive. And yet space itself cannot be perceived. What we are looking for when we seek to know our true self is the one thing we can never see. Only direct communion will allow us to realize what we truly are. To find this stillness is like finding the beating heart of a living body. And yet there is nothing tangible about it. It's as though we find the center of our being, only to find that there is no physical manifest being, and there is no center. Only space. Vast, loving, compassionate space. Moving from this so-called center becomes the easiest, most comfortable thing one could ever do. Nothing else feels congruous. It is standing still on that windless day, closing one's eyes and tilting one's face up to the sun. Hearing the birds in the trees. And losing any sense of self in the lack of movement. There is only life happening. Total stillness where we stand. All the things that pull us to and fro in daily life do not touch the stillness at the center of our being. Just as everything caught in the storm does not affect the eye of the storm. once we have touched this stillness, it is never gone, no matter how busy our mind, our life, our heart. It's like we have found our spiritual heart. And we reside in this. Never have we been more sure of who and what we are. We move at our own pace, the pace of grace, not someone else's, not the pace that life is telling us we should move at, in our work, in our family, in our culture or our religion. We move only in the direction that our spiritual heart naturally feels inclined to move. There is no haste. There is no concern for the content of a busy mind. That it is busy is noticed and let go. When we are no longer attached to having an empty mind, quiet mind, it does not matter how many trees it swings through. Because even the trees exist in space. everything we seek is already here. Nothing exists outside of this infinite space. The stillness that is the essence of what we are is not seeking anything. For it knows that everything is very spontaneous. There is nothing outside of this moment. The past is a memory, the future a mystery. Both only exist within imagination. And so this essence of being is present to only this moment. Even what was just a second ago is already gone. And what comes in the next second, nobody knows. Stillness doesn't care for either. Past and future are simply entertainment for the mind. The real gift is what's happening right now. All of life happens in the right now. Finding that infinite space, that stillness beyond words, is the only way of wholeheartedly engaging with life, 100% present to only this. Not get caught swinging between the trees of past and future. Caught in story and imagination. Trying to think our way out of the story that thinking got us into in the first place. trying to think ourselves into a better future that we're simply projecting from the fears built from our past experiences. Fears, desires, both entertainment for the mind. All of which arise and subside within space. Pure awareness. The spontaneous unfolding of grace. To rest in the heart of stillness is to not get caught in the desires and aversions, the grasping, the holding on, the content of mind and heart. It is simply to live from a place of infinite joy. And to remain as untouched by the fetters of life as the eye of the storm.
was really interesting. It was funny, just a split second before you talked. There's this like depersonalization trick that happens sometimes. It feels like a trick because it just happens, you know, from it's like there's an extrication of me from something, and then it's just buzz. It's just buzz, and then and it happened just a split second before you spoke, and it hadn't been happening for a while. It happens more often with my eyes open. I just stopped reading. I stopped reading thoughts into people's minds on the train or anything behind anything on the train, and it's just an image. And this one's a bit different because my eyes are shut. And so it's just like ownership goes, and so it's just energy. And but then it all sort of went like, sort of dropped to quite quiet. But then there's all these different subtle ways in which ownership was coming back, and I was seeing them more subtly in a way. At the very end there, something was happening higher up in my head with a heaviness that I could feel. Like the ownership was going out of a thought. I just noticed that was there, that ownership, and it was heavy. And often I noticed like, and I kind of can tell I've been thinking because there's a heaviness in my skull, in my bones, in my forehead. But this time I actually felt like just a heaviness in space and buzzing, you know, energy.
Yeah.
It was more of a subtle, it was a different version, yeah.
So what's left when there's no ownership of the thoughts?
Well, it was interesting because I was alternating between the focus on the energy that was still there, that just converted to energy. And then sometimes there was, but this seemed like a trick again, was focus on a notion of stillness, but because the stillness appears in so many versions, like today it was more like a core down my bottom of my spine or something. It just seems like a, you know, bunch of imaginative, you know, experiential ways of going along with the notion, although it seems quite real, the disappearance of ownership, and like that's part of not making anything of things. And then definitely you just have sensation and not fear or not sadness or despair or any of those things that the daily life is giving you. Yeah, so it's just, and then it's interesting if this not ownership comes in the form of trying to make head or tail of it, of saying that this is something real or this isn't, or, you know, what's the difference between experience and state and some sense of what's beyond those. It's more about not getting into that thought process and owning it, you know, feeling like you're in there. So it's all very
well, that's the key, isn't it? It's when there stops, when that thought of I'm doing this or I'm thinking this or I'm feeling this, or you know, is once the ownership stops, there's it's not quite a detachment, it's just a non-attachment.
And that's where I get confused again, because you think, yeah, well, this is kind of I'm kind of glad I'm not feeling that bit of fear that was just there, or that bit of sadness or whatever it is. It's kind of cool, but then it's like, where's the joy?
You know, it's the difference between detachment and non-attachment is that detachment's a little bit like a withdrawal, and non-attachment just means not holding on. So you can still feel the joy, as the detachment is what would have you not feel the joy because you're withdrawn from the experience. You can experience everything and not hold on to anything.
I was getting more of a sense of general experience at the same time, a little bit more. But yeah, that's the confusion though, because I seem to get joy when it feels like a trick again. It all feels like tricks, but in a way, like the joy seems to be when there's, again, no stepping away from this very, very moment, and it's just a very acute sense of the sensation is like joyful, and then you spot something on the arm and it makes you, woo, woo, just all the sensations, or something, smell, I don't know, something you spot, and there's just a bit of joy about it, and I'm starting to speak from a distance now because even the memory, I don't have a current memory of it, or an accessible memory right now, but sometimes there's a bit of a wow, this exists rather than not. I don't right now have an accessible memory of that. I just, that's a principle that's stored in my head right now. But
not every moment is going to feel like a wow, this exists moment.
Or even just a joy, like, ooh, that sensation was so sudden, it was so unexpected that it gave me a bit of a shock of joy. Like, I get those if it's just really, like I had a loud breath and I didn't even notice it was there until it was there.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't label it at the very beginning. And that was kind of joyful because it's so unexpected. I love massive things that I don't expect.
Yeah, so that kind of joy is like a state.
Yeah.
Right, the wow factor and the joy of something sudden coming through is transient, right? Is there anything that can change is a state. It's just an experience. So that interpretation of joy is a valid one. That's the state of joy, or the state of awe, that wow moment, and then that passes and something else arises. And that what's underneath that doesn't change. That's what, when we refer to the ground of being, or the essence of who and what we are, being joy or bliss, ananda, is this is the joy that isn't a state. This is the thing that doesn't change. So it will experience all states. And yet there's kind of like this essence of everything that, to call it happiness is a gross misrepresentation. But it's that there's something that is happy despite misery, and there's something that is joyous despite sadness or pain or anger or fear. Is that in the heart of all of that, there's a lightness of being that is untouched by the experience.
What about, like, just as you were talking, you have that thing that comes up sometimes of the stillness while all that other energetic stuff's happening, and you're aware of both, like simultaneously, but there is a sense of two, because the different, there's and the fact that it's just, there's a sittingness, and that just seems quite kind of like nothing's going to bother you.
Yeah.
But there wasn't any special other kind of, the other type of joy you're talking about or anything like that. It was just a kind of nice not being botheredness.
Yeah, it's a little like, in a beautiful piece of music, that there's a melody and a harmony, right? Let's just say that the harmony is a low, it's like a hum that runs along underneath, and the melody just does its thing on top. You can change the melody all you like.
It's like a silent hum.
And the hum is always there, right? It gives a little bit of depth and a little bit of body to the music. Is that you can put any notes you like in the melody. Okay, so whatever happens on experiential level can change, can do its own thing. And it will change. Everything changes on the relative level, on the absolute level. That hum is infinite.
I suppose I'm getting closer to the metaphor of a page, and then there's the stuff, but it just seems like an ending, never-ending base sort of thing. You don't look for an end, you just notice that it, counterpoint to, it's kind of like a counterpoint to,
It has no beginning and no end.
And it's not going away.
Doesn't go anywhere. There's nowhere for it to go.
So if you can see these two things, but it doesn't feel like a love or the other joy you're talking about, does that mean there's other shit still going on somewhere at the same time as these two things? Like, I'm not bothered by anything right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're watching the melody play out,
Yeah.
you know.
And
it doesn't matter what happens in the melody.
Yeah. No.
I can go
And
ultra
there's a sense
high.
of, like, bass, you know.
It can be monotone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, there's just this kind of grounded being that's perfectly still and perfectly okay with everything, however it plays out. And there's part of that is the non-attachment. You know, is that you can witness, you can experience and not grasp at, not hold on to.
Because I'm experiencing right now what normally then gets labelled as fear and turns into a me story where I'm completely clouded over, hidden in it, you know. Whereas right now I'm just feeling the arm sensation and the left chest sensation that normally goes with it, which is warm and energetic, you know. I just suppose the fear keeps creeping in, like, oh, it's going to pop out any second.
It's a noticing without grasping. It doesn't matter what it is. There's no need to change it. There's no need to make it linger if it's going to pass. There's no need to make it pass if it's going to linger. It's just noticing. And it's all of life is this infinite now. You know, it's always this noticing. There's always something to notice. And ultimately, in the end, there's nobody here to notice. You know, it's just that the noticing and the happening are one and the same.
I suppose, because I'm noticing quite different things at different times, and they all seem to be like in the right direction. Like one is just, I was feeling quite a relaxedness the other day. Like I was on my way to Bob's, sitting on the tram, I was like, just relaxing, and then it's this feels real nice, the cheek feels, yeah, the arm feels nice, Just wasn't moving out of the moment in some way, you know, but not in a really clear, the kind of detail I can observe sometimes, or quite often. It was just more like, you know, yeah, I'm just enjoying it. You know, like when you're probably drunk or something, just and you're just like quite interested in what's happening right now. And it was quite relaxed and enjoyable, and the whole evening was kind of like that. So that's like quite different from seeing the bass and the melody. But it probably felt more enjoyable and more in the moment in a way.
It's the bass, you know, the harmony that is that hum. That's just the joy of no matter what's happening, I'm going to enjoy it. You know, and I mean, we can take that all very intellectually and say that means we have to enjoy the tragedies and the heartbreaks and to understand that from an intellectual or emotional level is to misunderstand.
But you're not then because you're storying.
Yeah. So there is still the heartbreak.
Yeah.
And yet there's something underneath that is unharmed by the heartbreaking in that moment.
So does that mean if, like, there's a flip in the story and then a flip out and the hum's back? Because wouldn't the hum just be obscured for the moment that it is?
It may be.
Yeah.
If we've become entrenched in the story and in the heartbreak, if we're caught in the mind or in the emotions of the moment so much that we've lost the direct communion with stillness.
So what's a heartbreak without story feel like? Or is it not really
Feels
a heartbreak
like
without story?
being hit by a wave
Right.
in the open ocean. You know, and it might just feel like it lingers.
Yeah.
And then eventually it passes. There's no resistance to it. There's no part of oneself saying, I don't want to feel this is horrible. It's a complete openness and a complete vulnerability and a complete willingness for the heart to break.
So isn't a heartbreak a kind of separation feeling? Or is heartbreak slightly different in that respect?
It could feel like a separation. It may not always feel like that. Okay, it could just be that in that moment the sadness is overwhelming.
Right, and then it becomes story for a split second, the separation.
It may or it may not.
So you can sort of have a sense of separation biologically without story.
You can just be flooded with grief.
Right.
And then, like everything that is experienced as a state, it will pass. Quicker if you're not storying.
Yeah. So it's like all those cool, it's just like grief can be another cool thing that's happening right now and enjoyable.
It's like being hit by a different wave. You know, it's instead of being hit by the wave of love or bliss or, you know, fear, desire.
Pain in the foot.
Pain in the foot. Yeah. They get hit by a wave of grief. But there's nothing in that. There's nothing in that experience that says, I don't like this wave. Can that just be over with, please?
I mean, if I'm not reacting to a pain in the foot, I'm actually liking that it's there. So in a way, there's no such thing as pain in the normal sense of the word, really. Unless you're storing
it's the story,
a second or whatever. Yeah.
It's like pins and needles.
Yeah, it's like another sensation.
You know, you have this, whatever you want to call it, this sensation of pins and needles. And if you go into the story, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
But if you don't go into the story, it's like, oh, that's really funny. Ah.
And I think before, because I'd extricated stuff, I was extricated, and then I was actually feeling just still. And then the fuzz had gone down too, so then there was some story and came up about false stillness or whatever. But and then I had a dead leg, and I put it out, and actually it didn't hurt so much. But I don't know if I'd done some form of repression with feeling, because I can do that if I want to. So I've hardly done that in my life, it seemed pointless. But it just didn't. The pins and needles didn't play out like they normally do. I don't know, but it just felt like dropping of the leg. It just felt like a dropping feeling. Just drop. But,
Yeah.
No. I just neither here nor there. Just something to observe.
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to what the story is. You know. Particularly with something as all-encompassing as pins and needles, it's like it takes your focus from everything else in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, is that if we get caught in a story of, oh my God, that really hurts, what can I do about this?
Terrible any second, yeah.
Yeah.
Each pin and needle's going to be worse.
But if you
than
just
this one.
laugh,
I
can go, oh my gosh, that's the most curious sensation.
Yeah. It's just interesting. Like a pain is just interesting, and it's so cool because it's a new thing to experience. Bye-bye boredom, or bye-bye.
And that's, all of life becomes like that. As that, instead of looking at it going, oh my God, this is horrible, how do I get rid of this? You just laugh and go, oh, this is such a curious experience.
Another curious experience, that starting to make sense, yeah. Because I recognise, I'm being recognising more and more curious experiences.
Yeah.
And
then there's no label within that of this is a good or this is a bad experience. Or this is something I want again, or this is something I never want again.
I know, good experience can come a bit later. I'm okay with that though. Like, I'm glad I'm experiencing this as a curious, fun experience that exists. Maybe I'm on the right path. I don't really care too much that I'm having those thoughts. Because I know I'm not ridden with, this it, I know that's not a huge issue that wastes my time,
Who says there's a right path?
Yeah, I don't really care about that either, much. I really don't. And I'm less bothered about little despair feelings like, oh, this is taking too long, or this is too bothersome, or whatever, It's slight sufferings on the way, or that endless repetition of chatter. Because I know it's way less than before, and I know that just there's so much observation goes on here that there's always new types of observation coming up, and then that can seem like, oh geez, another whole brand of observation to observe. And then that's cool, it's just fodder for poetry. And one day it'll run out. But I'm sure there'll be different sorts of poetry can come up then, you know. And it's been interesting lately, I've been noticing a few storyings starting to come up, so I'm starting to notice things things creeping in thing, you know, which hasn't been able to be observed so much before, I think, and that's kind of fun as well. Another fun thing, you know. I like it because it's a different fun thing to see. It's a few storyings, you know, trotting in about, like, say for example, where income needs to come from. So that's an indirect planning thing. You know, it's like, oh no, I've got to get these poems finished so that idea about, you know, taking them to a publisher can happen, and you know, it ties into all the stories about, okay, an income idea suddenly has to be an income possibility.
That's just the monkey mind swinging into another tree.
To the related trees, it's already kind of knows, and then adding a new thing in.
There's a tree in there called I'd Like to Know.
The next dollar's coming.
There's another one in there called I'd Like to Be Right. There's a third one called I'd Like to Control.
I'd like to be free. Yeah, I'm been enjoying some more. Had a nice chat with some dude who's kind of coming from a similar background, and even though we're kind of discussing the research side of things, the psychological side of things, it was nice to just give me another little slight pointer in the picture, the patterning, how it had been happening, and now I can see the pattern in limbo. This is the romantic pattern. But it was just like another little prod to see which bits were maybe slipping back or were just not moving away from that pattern a little bit, like lingering. And so I think that might just open it up a bit to just letting go of that pattern altogether.
Yeah, or just observing the pattern.
It's just, it just gave some prods into observing it afresh a bit, where some observation had stopped, you know. And
not needing it to change. Recognising that on the relative level everything will always change.
Yeah. It had been left for a while, and I suppose stagnating a bit in a new version of the pattern, but much less as it was. There's just a general knowledge that that pattern just doesn't want to be around the way it was anymore. And there's also there was stagnating a bit in a kind of transitional form. Now it feels like maybe it'll move, but there's no move to actually investigate in that way. It just feels a bit fresh.
Allow the movement to come from that heart of stillness. When you sort of drop into that essence of being, that when you move from there, it's very obvious when something is expanding you and when something's contracting you.
Yeah.
And so what might seem like difficult decisions are super easy. And there's no concern for how somebody might respond to you speaking that truth. It's just this is what feels true.
I suppose there was a story around sitting on the coattails and being buffeted by, you know, the winds of fortune sort of thing. But I suppose if I go to the core, then it's real wait and watch. It's really nothing more than wait, really.
Be present to what is, to whatever's unfolding right now. It's not about the destination, it's all in the journey.
So I guess there was a sort of indirect destination being created while the coattails got set on, metaphorically.
The mind loves to fixate on destinations.
So even though I was never like a proactive destination type, it was probably a, indirect, reactive, more of like a reactive, or just a, I deserve to be buffeted kind of. But the core is just still. And so
come back to now.
Yeah, and now there's not that much happening.
Yeah, and yet there's always something happening.
But the churn isn't even much there right now. It's quite still. There's not much energy related to the usual stuff in the head, and just a few exterior sensations in the room. Yeah, I can see how the mind wants to jump in with all the things that could be happening.
Yeah.
When it gets busy again.
It does that. And it doesn't matter how busy it gets, that stillness is still underneath it.
Yeah, there's just a layer. I mean, I can sense all those things, and then there's a layer saying, just you wait, there's busyness hovering, ready to fall any second. There's a kind of sensation, tension around that. Even though right now the cause is there, the very light, low sensations of leftover reactions, the stuff in the room. And I don't even have to try to listen to what you say or take it in or absorb it or anything. That's just like nothing to do. And this is hovering tension.
Let's stop there, there's nothing to do.
And then I can flip back to seeing all the other stuff, but then that tension's there too. And I can flip back to the core and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Just keep going round and round. At least the core's not rushed off.
Yeah. And it's never about the words,
Well, it's like some kind of visualization, but it's some kind of keying in as well. So it's not just the visual, even though it's different all the time. There's a keying in to...
They're just little reminders, to take everyone back to the direct experience.
Yeah, and that's coming in, all these direct experiences.
Yeah.
Including the direct experience of hovering. I'm going to drop down on you in a second.
Yeah, we will never find awakening in the teachings. They're just...
You don't need to, because the keying ins are pretty good.
Pointers.
Like... Right now it's just going through a raft of experiences, not the actual words. But I guess the words are keying in, or maybe they pop up at a similar time to the keying in. Suspiciously. Like you can't say anything about how they're connected. But this roller coaster goes around and around. Pops back to that other one, the waiting.
That's the nature of mind.
The waiting, yeah. But it doesn't really bother me because it doesn't really feel like necessary mind. It just feels like a bunch of different experience / keying ins to what's really there. And they're all really there, equally. And then this little comes up, oh, it's nice, I can key back into all those things. Just like that, I'm not just left back up in the mind, or I'm not just, having to wait for another pointer back to the core or another strong enough right now that they all just can go and keep coming.
Yeah.
And then I was just sent out to the experiences in the room. Yeah.
Well, that's all of life will be like that.
And then there was a thought.
Things are coming and going.
Yeah.
The mind will be active and then it's quiet. Yeah. Something will pop up and then it's gone. Something will be sensed. Temperature changes. There's something moving in the room, or something changes colour, or there'll always be sensations.
And often like the doubt form thought comes up after the stuff about the room. The doubt thought seems to be more undifferentiated, but it's still isn't necessarily all simultaneous. And then that goes because I don't really, I know there's not the time to understand that. Or it's already understood and I'm just not quite recognising it, Yeah. But, whatever, moved on. Yeah.
What may be happening is that you're assuming it's a concurrent experience. That you get to experience the joy of the ground of being simultaneously with another experience, grief or fear or desires. It's more like that joy is what you're seeing through. It's like the eyes you're looking with. And so it may not be an experience, as that the joy might not be a simultaneous experience with grief. It's that what is experiencing the grief is joy. The words are not going to work for this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to convey that. It's that it's a realization. Rather than an experience in that moment, is that the realization is seeing through eyes of joy, even if the experience of that moment is not the state of joy.
So, for example, when I had the pain but it was experienced delightfully, would that be similar?
Yeah.
It's experienced as delight because, afterwards the thoughts came in, why is it experienced as delight? Well, there was a sense of like, wow, that exists.
Yeah.
Curious and different and unusual, and if it didn't exist, it wouldn't be that. And it's kind of delightful, I suppose, that it wasn't painful.
Yeah, but even if it were painful, there's still that delight. It's like, this hurts.
I mean, it was painful. It was pain.
Yeah,
but
there's something laughing at it too, right?
Yeah, there's no story in it, so I didn't even react at all. But it still felt like pain feels. But I think the most delight was that it was different, unexpected and different. Yeah. So I have those moments. And now there's a glorious feeling of, my God, I have so many different moments. I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
And there's no sense of, there was no sense of me while that was happening.
Yeah.
Sure, because I've been and looked enough when people have asked me to check. I think we make up that there's a location. We just make that up afterwards. I don't even think we really do think there is one at the time. I think that's the confusion out there. You have to make it up afterwards.
The mind is a cunning creature.
I just managed to slow it down enough to see these things, so I kind of realised that the other day.
Thank you.